and then in terms of that as well, like you mentioned about kind of like the work ethic side of it as well, and like really, like the kind of having that really resilient, powerful mental attitude. And a lot of people end up falling in love with hard work through building their physique, and it's people would never from the outside will think that, but it's so true because it's essentially all on you. And I did actually wonder in terms of like bodybuilding, was that possibly another reason maybe why you chose that more than like say like a team sport or something like that?
Yeah, I think because like literally the outcome was completely like you said, down to your efforts and down to how much you put into the preparation. And so I did compete for 4 years. Yeah, sorry, I forgot what the question was. Then I'm just
Yeah,
going on a tangent
yeah.
on that.
But in terms of like with bodybuilding in general, um, was it a case of because it is essentially it is all on you? Is it was that more of a draw as well because you can control the ins and the outs a little bit easier rather than like a team sport and you have to rely.
Absolutely, yeah. So
Yeah,
as I was just saying, like because of how hard you could work, like how hard you work determined and depicted how well you looked on stage. So massively, I think that's it. Just is a true reference of hard work. Like you looking on that stage is the hard work that you've put into, but it's not as appreciated as it should be.
yeah, definitely.
To get like a £5 trophy at the end and to get like 15 minutes on stage to like five the years of training you're doing and the 5 months of like really hard dieting come down to like 15 minutes on stage. It's really unjustified.
Yeah, yeah, definitely have mad respect for everyone who gets up on stage. The level of dedication and everything that goes into it, and because it is essentially, like with football, I understand there's training involved and stuff, but like the meticulousness with like dieting and the preparation, like you said, leading up into it, isn't just like an overnight thing. It involves so much dedication, so much discipline. And in terms of I know you mentioned your coach before. Could you possibly mention like some of the stuff he had you doing? I know a lot's changed since like back in the day, and we didn't have the enormous like YouTube network of people, the fitness influencers and stuff like this, and scientists and people on YouTube. What kind of stuff was going on like to get that lean back in the day?
And like you were saying, like we're in a time where like sports science is huge at the minute, and
Yeah.
back then it was such simpler times. Like I never questioned anything, and as a naive like 20-year-old, 19-year-old, I never questioned why I was doing something or I didn't want to know the reason behind it. And now, like it'd be the first thing you asked. But yeah, so the coach at the time like would have me on like I remember my last meal on one phase, like the last phase, like it might have been like 4 weeks before stage. It was like 95 grams of steak and like five amino acids. No
Wow.
fiber, no fat, no carbohydrates, just that was it. And then like 3 hours of cardio. And I'd never questioned it. I stuck to it. And yeah, I think that's where I lost the love because I went so hard into it and
Yeah.
this just isn't worth it. I've stripped a load of muscle and I came away with a lot of like bad health habits, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, and yeah, in terms of it required like from what it sounds like a very very extreme lifestyle to get.
Oh yeah,
Like
you couldn't have a social life. Like that
yeah,
was not part. If you had a social life, you quite clearly, in the eyes of the people who you was competing against, quite clearly didn't want it enough. And
yeah,
such a bad way of thinking about things. It's so bad for your mental health. And like I'm sure a lot of people like they'll have like serious eating disorders and like bad habits from the severe diets that they put on because
yeah,
like like, either whether it's like completely having like a full like cheat day or
yeah,
like a cheat meal,
yeah.
depicting it doing something wrong or like they'll think they'll have to do like endless amounts of cardio after they've had something nice to eat. And yeah, it's just for me, the industry that the bodybuilding side of industry isn't great. No.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially like back in the day as well, because there was so much like bro science going on, and there's so much like it's almost like I call it like virtual AIDS. There's just this spreading of bad
Like
information.
I was saying, like no one questioned it at the time though, which is absolutely like crazy,
Yeah,
absolutely crazy.
Absolutely, yeah. The level of weird. I don't know if you ever watched the video or not, Marcus. Maybe the five foods that work, and it was something like sweet potato, oats, brown rice, eggs, and then chicken or something. It was like, and everyone was like, "We've literally hacked the system." It was like bodybuilder. I remember watching that, like I've frigging done it. Like I literally got the blueprint. So that's literally all I did. I did it for years. I did it for years.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, then just like not questioning, just like not thinking about the repercussions of it, and the tendency to have these habits really reinforce disordered eating. And really, to be honest, if I was to look at like where I was back then, and even like a competitive bodybuilder, I would say they are crossing over the disordered eating tendencies and the criteria. So, and you mentioned about mental health and also the social life. That's the kind of mentality back in the day that it was, you know, if someone was relaxing, you're thinking someone else is getting ahead. So
It's as simple as that. Like that's what it's so screwed. It's a screwed way of thinking. As like, well, they're socializing, so they must not want it more. You're isolating yourself to think that like you want it more than someone else. It's yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I can't speak for everyone who's been through like the bodybuilding side. I'm sure there's a load of people who have had some really good like memories and like they might have something very positive come from it. I'm talking about it in a bad light. I'm just thinking me talking now is my experience with the unnatural bodybuilding industry.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's good that, you know, like I said, you're very open about talking about that, which a lot of people aren't open about talking about that. Never been my thing, but I've never been, you know, for people who are doing that and stuff like that, I can understand it. And I know they still work extremely hard. And it's nothing to be said. I think most people think it's like a magic potion. All of a sudden, you just put on 200 pounds of muscle, and it's like there's a whole, you know, you still have to work hard at the end of the day. So,
Well,
um,
people like we was talking about before, like being naive, not questioning what food you're eating, not questioning like the routines you're going on, but not questioning what substance you're putting in your body. And if
yeah,
like definitely me as like a 20-year-old, I I'm stupid and so naive. And like when I went to the doctors after I finished and realized what position I'd put myself in, being stage 2 hypertension,
well,
and it just people don't understand, especially with like the performance enhancing drugs. Like your heart is a cardiac muscle; it's an involuntary muscle.
yeah.
Like when you train the voluntary muscles, like when your chest, obviously that's having an effect on your chest muscle. It's getting bigger. So imagine what it's going to do to your heart that's involuntary working all the time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting. I remember one time hearing about a bodybuilder called Victor Martinez. I don't know if you heard of him. And he had gone into prison for, I don't know what it was for. And he had gone into prison and it wasn't for that long. And because he was on anabolics, he literally was so small when he finished. And it was just crazy difference. And I've heard of, like you mentioned about like breathing and your heart muscle and stuff like this. I was literally just thinking that one set, Marcus. I love the way that yours is literally, you could literally just like get a cheeky bicep shot in, but I'll make sure to edit that bit out. But yeah, like loads of bodybuilders having massive issues with breathing and massive issues, so you're moving around stuff for this. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. And coming out of that, in terms of, you know, you've just heard, was it stage 2 hypertension? What was the first initial thought? You thought, I just need to drastically change what I'm doing. I need to.
Disgusted in myself, if I'm honest, like, and how obviously you can't, hindsight's an amazing thing and you can't change the past. And I, like looking back now, I wouldn't change it because I wouldn't choose the route that I've gone down now. But at the time, I was just disgusted. Like the doctor was, and I'm so glad he was brutally honest with me. He said, look, if you're going to carry on like this, I don't think you'll make it till you're 40.
Yeah,
And that was just a real eye opener to me. I was like, I want to have grandchildren. I want to have children. And look at me being this like selfish prick. Sorry for swearing, but like,
it's okay. We're
yeah,
good.
just
Yeah,
it was a complete eye opener, and I'm so glad it happened.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so there was quite a lot of silver lines that came out of it, and you handled it very, very well, especially at like young age. It's like not particularly nice thing to hear, I would imagine. And so coming out of that then now, so you've done that now and like kind of transitioned out. And I've seen you go into like different domains, like still doing in coaching as well, which is brilliant. And what actually sparked like the kind of MMA side of it then, the kind of cage fighting and doing the jiu-jitsu side of it?
So around about time it must have been 2017 is when I got into MMA. And the whole reason I stumbled across it was I was working a hell of a lot of hours. I was doing so much time on the gym floor and I just wasn't getting any headspace. And I've touched on it on a few podcasts where like my mental health was starting to dip down and like training in the gym, like with the weights and resistance just wasn't doing anything, wasn't filling a gap for me anymore. So I thought, well, I had that love there. Can I not transfer that across to anything else? And I just stumbled across I found a Brazilian jiu-jitsu class and me and my mate went and it was just that kind of, that headspace I needed. It was 2.5 hours of, I didn't have to think, or if I thought I'd be getting choked the hell out. So it felt like a fight or flight and it was just so refreshing. So it just kind of spiraled from there. I kind of do that twice a week. And then I was like, if I do it more, I'm going to get more headspace, which is brilliant. And then I transitioned into doing like sparring with the other like fighters in the gym. I love that because it was more headspace. And then I was pestering the coach at the gym to let me fight. I was like, no, you're not ready. And I was like, every because he always ran a fight. He's like every 3 months, every camp I'd be like, can I do it? Can I do it? Nope, you're not ready. Oh, okay. Next one. Can I do it? Nope, you're not ready. And then the next time he asked, was like, right, the next one that comes up, you can do.